Hello and good evening. We are gathered here for a discussion on garbage and art. When I speak about garbage, it's a term that I started using a couple of months ago, and it comes from this kind of desperation that we live in this society that is not changing, and everything that you hear on news is bad. We're sitting at home in our Zoom meetings for 16 hours a day, and reading statistics on packaging materials and non-recyclable parts in e-cigarettes, and so everything just at some point starts to sound like garbage. And garbage for me is this term that I started to use to describe everything, everything that is not not nice, not pleasant, but in a kind of healthy type of way. So everything is garbage. So I hope that today we will be discussing different practices in dealing with sustainability, and how we as artists are translating the garbage that is around us into some kind of creative practice, and the practice that could promote sustainable lifestyle, or just maybe mindfulness, or I don't know, maybe some other areas regarding species and feminism, and our speculative futures. We have a group of artists who are invited to share their presentations, and we have agreed on the order beforehand. I will not introduce anyone. Everyone should introduce themselves. And I will just now mute my microphone and test who checked the Google document that I shared before.
Am I first up, Maija?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, cool. I wanted to just double check. Anyway, well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invite, and I'm happy to be here. Nice to see some old friends. Nice to see Alex over here too. My name is Byron Rich. I'm Associate Professor of Art, among other things, at Allegheny College, which is a little university just north of Pittsburgh, actually. So my weather is similarly terrible to Alex's. And yeah, I don't need to give myself much more of an introduction. I'm going to share my screen here and dive right into my presentation. 11:08, so I know what time to get finished here. All right. Is that showing up? Should be an image
Yes.
of a bunch of burning garbage. And okay,
Yes.
perfect. All right. So the project that I'm going to be introducing today is called the Suburbs of Accra. I started this project just a little while ago. I've had it kind of on my mind for a couple of years, but COVID, of course, got in the way. And so I started in earnest, sort of in, I guess, early summer as funding allowed. I'm had to postpone a trip actually to Ghana to continue to work on the project, and I'll be headed over there sometime this summer. So this project kind of broadly is all about e-waste, and how e-waste, or electronic waste, is kind of a form of like neo-colonial violence, and how we, especially in the West, but particularly from my vantage point in North America, are perpetrators of this. So I'll start off with a little bit of history here, if I can figure my life out. There we go. So this is where I'm from in Western Canada, a really beautiful kind of place that hides a lot of really dark secrets. Although the kind of like region in Alberta that most people see, the Rocky Mountains here, seems really pristine, hiding kind of just outside of view is this sort of sprawling, kind of horrific scene of just these monster houses that kind of endlessly kind of just exist out into the horizon. Also beyond these kind of like sprawling neighborhoods and stuff is the largest industrialized site on the planet, that being the tar sands in northern Alberta. I'm not going to touch too much on them right now, but just know that Alberta is this like paradoxical kind of land of almost like unimaginable beauty and then just horrific environmental devastation. And this was the backdrop to my entire life for my first 27 years until I moved to the Northeast United States, where environmental devastation has been kind of rampant and much more visible over the last 2 centuries. So this is when I grew up in Alberta. This is kind of like what the families circa 2002 largely looked like. Everybody kind of hovering around. And Maija, sorry, this is boring for you as you've already seen this presentation. But anyway, this is kind of probably what my family looked like too. Just a bunch of weird, kind of ignorant white people hanging out around their computer, not really thinking about the horrific effects that they're having living in their, 600 square meter homes or larger. Just kind of like hanging out in Alberta, having a great time, digging for oil. So I really got to thinking about this though, when I started to tour some really wildly industrialized areas within the city of Calgary that you never see and you don't even realize exist. And what I started to see were these areas where there was just all this electronics waste just piling up. This is not an image of that. This is an image of Accra. But I started to like tour these areas and I really got curious about where all this garbage was ending up because it clearly wasn't being recycled in Calgary. There was no facilities for it. There was kind of no thought process. This was obviously leaving and going somewhere. So back then I kind of left that alone because I was just an undergraduate student, just hanging out, working on other stuff and didn't think about it that much until a few years ago when I stumbled upon this very image of a site called the Agwa Market in Accra in Ghana. Why I was curious about this is because right here, there's a Dell computer dead center in this screen. And I had that exact computer circa about 2007. And I was kind of like fascinated, like, oh my gosh, I wonder if a lot of like the e-waste that I had been producing, buying a new computer every 2 years for decades, where it ended up. And I started to look into it more and more. And the realization I came to is that the vast majority of the electronics waste that is produced, especially in North America, ends up in Southeast Asia or at this market in Ghana. A lot of the plastics ends up in Mexico behind these like massive walled facilities where you can't kind of see the horrific conditions that people are living in. This Agwa market in Accra is particularly fascinating and horrific, in so much as there's children and animals and families all living and working in this area, and there's absolutely no environmental or personal health regulations whatsoever. It's just kind of a free-for-all of people picking through this electronics waste site, looking for precious metals and collecting the plastics and the motherboards and whatever else from all this like discarded material. What I'm really interested in is the data that comes off of these. So here I'm just going to zoom in on exactly where Accra is for folks that don't know. So there's Africa. Here's Ghana sort of in the center. And I know I've got way too many tabs open in my browser, so don't judge me. Accra, if we zoom in a little bit further. And then here's the actual Agbogbloshie market. I'm probably absolutely butchering the pronunciation on that. And here's the market and the housing and all the stalls and everything within it. This is what it looks like on Street View if you actually look at it. So I now have this contact who's really wonderful, who's been putting me in touch with different resellers within the market itself. And I've started to actually collect storage devices like computer hard drives, old cell phones, other stuff from the market. And what I'm trying to do, so here's a couple of examples of things that I've had sent to me. So here's like an old Dell Inspiron and an old iBook G4. Here's an old whatever this Mac was called from 2007, 2008. What I'm interested in is actually gathering the data off of these. So images, tax forms, personal information, all that type of stuff from these various devices, and kind of putting together like a bit of a narrative or a snapshot into the lives of the people that owned them. And I'll show you a little bit of the process. So this is my research assistant, Kylie, kind of working on the graphic design side of things, creating little like artifacts out of some of the objects we've gathered. This is Kaylani, one of my other research assistants, creating like vacuum formed, using recycled plastics from some various like machines harvested from there, creating like little objects that are going to act as pedestals for some of the like data storage devices that we are actually gathering. So here's an example of like an old camera that was recycled and then turned into this like little pedestal using recycled plastic from a old MacBook. Here's some like slides that are also harvested or not. These are just like slides that I had around, kind of like acting as kind of like a conduit back to antiquated storage devices onto which we'll actually like put chips and data storage device like hard drives and whatever. That doesn't really matter. What we're doing with this is using Unity to create augmented reality objects that are actually going to be located within the Agbogblosi market itself. Those augmented reality objects are going to look sort of like this. This is kind of a bad Photoshop or an actual example of what one of them looks like, where we've taken the data and the images and all this kind of like information collected off of these hard drives. And what we're doing is actually creating these objects to show how neocolonialism is alive and well, and how this type of like neocolonial violence is being largely perpetrated unwittingly by folks like this family right here. So I've changed the names on these because I'm still dealing with the implications of actually using people's actual data, but this is their actual location. This is the actual device, the Johnson family, Becky, Jason, Noah, and Mick. Those are their actual first names. I've changed their last name just to a random one. And so what we're doing is actually taking like a snapshot of their house, the family, the data, the location, the date of manufacture, and the device, and then locating these things within Agbogblosi market. So you could go over there, hold up your phone, and then these folks would pop up on your screen. You'll also be able to explore it just like on Google Maps. We're making a little plugin for it. So here's the Myers family, again, a fictitious name, but the first names are in fact real. The date, the device, and the location are also real. So this is their actual house, just kind of like plopped into in situ in the Agbogblosi market. So this is ultimately what the project is going to manifest as. We've started construction on all this, and we'll be finishing up here over the next few weeks, actually, the first initial version of it, where on the right, you'll actually see the augmented reality like asset. And then on the left, you'll actually see where a map, where it's located. And these will kind of just like cycle through. You'll be able to push a button and it'll kind of just like rotate through, showing you the maps, paralleling maps of where in the market this particular device was found and where in the world the device actually existed prior to that. So for instance, in Minneapolis or in South Carolina or in Calgary or whatever. And then on the right, you'll see the family that owned it. And then on the table in front, we're just collecting all the devices and displaying them kind of in like a weird little format. So yeah, that's, I think I've only run about 10 minutes now. I can dive in a little bit deeper if you want, but I don't want to, I know folks probably will want lots of time, so I don't want to eat up too much with that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else really important to touch on. I guess I could touch on like my fascination with garbage is just kind of the realization that I'm sort of a horrible person in so much as I still live in one of these like monster houses in North America on an over the top piece of land and have way too many cars and have this like massive ecological footprint, and like coming to terms with what that means and what it means in terms of like my life to actually downsize. I have a family, I have a daughter, and you know, I've got all the trappings of like a pretty typical North American life. And it sounds so stupid to like just say that it's only been relatively recent that I've been coming to terms with that, but lifestyle creep is a very real thing, I've realized. And when I was like young and living in a studio apartment in Calgary, Alberta, or Buffalo, New York, or wherever it was, I kind of was like, oh, I'm not so bad. I take public transit. I live in this tiny house. But as my life has progressed, I've just taken on this like massive ecological footprint. And that's horrible. And I am, you know, consider myself one of these like neo-colonizers. So it's kind of like a self-awareness and sort of a reconciling that I'm doing with myself right now, acknowledging the fact, or trying to acknowledge the fact and figure out a way that I can navigate myself out of being so horrible without totally decimating a lifestyle that I've really grown accustomed to and kind of sadly enjoy. And what that means for the planet and for the people of like Agbogblosi, for instance. So anyway, that is the suburbs of Accra, and I'm happy to talk more about it at length, or you know, when we get to the discussion part of this whole thing. I look forward to chatting a little bit more, but I'll leave it there. This is my contact info. brich@allegheny.edu is how you can email me. My website is just byronrich.com. And you can follow me on Instagram at byron_in_space.png. Largely, that's more where you can see my horrible lifestyle and how awful of a human being I actually am than it is art typically. But with that, I will pass it off to our next presenter. Thank you very much, Maija, for inviting me, and thank you all for being present. I appreciate it.
Our next presenter has missed that it's his turn. Jan, that's you.
Thank you, Maija.
Yes,
I choose to be surprised as you wrote.
I'm so sorry. I didn't know that. Well, you are the second speaker, and Alex can start preparing his presentation. You will be after that.
Okay, thank you, Maija, for inviting me. It's great to see. Just basically, I'm saying what Byron was saying. Like, great to see old friends, great to see new people. I won't make it that long because I don't have a presentation prepared. I just got a documentation of a recent work from an exhibition. That's why I'm in Switzerland, which I took just down yesterday. So I'm just going to send a link because it's a YouTube video and it's 13 minutes long. And while everybody clicks on that and looks at it, I just can briefly go over who I am and what I'm doing. I'm a doctoral researcher at the Vilnius Academy of Fine Arts in Lithuania. And I research what I call artistic biotechnology, to set it apart from bioart, because bioart is kind of a problematic field. So basically, it is biotechnology. So biotechnology borrows from the natural sciences, from biology and microbiology, and from engineering to cross over to make biotechnology. And there's pharmaceutical biotechnology, medicinal biotechnology, food biotechnology. All it's pretty applied. And of course, why there shouldn't be artistic biotechnology being employed to create pieces of art. Simple as that. So if you click on the link, you see a actually second-hand bioreactor. It is the go-to bioreactor of the former Soviet-occupied part of Germany. It's Rasotherm. Rasotherm was just used for everything. They used it for irrigation of agricultural fields and stuff. So it comes from Thuringia. Thuringia is where basically the usage of glass in Germany has been pioneered in Germany. So secondhand, I'm kind of stuck right now with this idea of how do we encounter other than human entities, organisms in research setups, in artistic setups, exhibitions, etc. And in the progress of delabeling myself from bioart, because if you don't, as an artist, if you don't speak about what you're doing, somebody will stick a label to you, and then that label, you know, it's sticky. So it's like making a mess of what you're doing, and then you have to say what you're actually doing to not be thrown in a bowl with all these people that have practices that are very questionable. So I'm reframing myself as a choreographer. What you see is a dance piece for other than humans. It's especially, this is Schizosaccharomycodes pombe. Fun fact, pombe is Swahili and means beer, because this is where it was first discovered by a white guy in 1880. And Saccharomycodes ludwigi, and that's a hard one. Let's say an acid, cellulose, making bacteria. It has a beautiful name. It just was recently renamed, so that's why I don't have it in my repertoire right now. Yeah, that's basically what I'm doing. Not going to use all that 15 minutes, so somebody else can take more of the time, I guess. Any questions?
Thank you. And I do enjoy looking at your dancers.
Thank you.
Reminds me a lot of kombucha that is growing in my room.
Now, to be honest, it is kombucha. It's just a fancy name for kombucha. Okay. It's not a fancy name. It was about spelling out the names of the dancers. If you look at it as a choreography, and not as something that you eat or drink, because this is part of what I meant, that it always has to have a use for humans. So it's always very functional. And dance is maybe not that functional on more an abstract level of function, meaning and art and all that good stuff. But yeah, you cannot really drink it, because it is piping in pressurized air from a defunct factory. So I think there's lots of carcinogenic material inside there now.
Okay. Let's move to our third presentation.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Young. I'm an artist based in Pittsburgh, United States. Thank you, Maija, for the invitation, and good to see you, Byron, and yeah, nice to see all of everyone else. So I will just quickly launch into screen share and continue on from there. Okay, so I wanted to quickly share a project I've been working on called Solar Salad, which currently has an iteration realized in collaboration with Matthew Friday from the environmental art and design collective Spurse, on view at Unison Arts Sculpture Garden in upstate New York. A while back, I was conducting field research with an environmental research group I started with Lindsay French, Aaron Malaya, and Steve Gurish, who are all amazing artists you should also check out. And we were amidst the industrial environs of southwestern Pennsylvania, where I kind of started observing and working with pokeweed plants that grow in the sort of marginal zones or edgelands in these industrial environs. And what we're seeing here is pokeweed adjacent to the what was then soon to be shuttered Bruce Mansfield coal-fired power station. While working with pokeweed, I encountered research conducted at Wake Forest University's Center for Nanotechnology and Molecular Materials, suggesting it as a dye photosensitizer in the development of solar cells as a means to bring electrical power to distant areas where extractive exploits had rendered lands infertile. I wanted to counter the goals of yet another attempt to direct colonial capital solutions and solutions in scare quotes to undefined, unnamed other peoples. And I wanted to work with these weedy companions as collaborators in a speculative de-escalation of a modernity predicated on cheap nature and cheap life. As the pokeweed solar cell cannot fill the energy demands of a world facilitated by fossil fuels like the Bruce Mansfield power plant, and nor should it, but from these contaminated conditions and materials, I was envisioning alter worlds of unsettling. So I set to work harvesting berries. And here we can see kind of a diagram of disparate connections from solar expenditure to pokeweed, or its Latin Phytolacca americana, through these solar cells and into these other sorts of projects that I'll get into. Solar salad derives its name from the Appalachian pokeweed dish, poke salad, salad being an older English word of French origin that roughly implies a mess of greens. And that's kind of where I was seeing this project, in this mess of greenness and all the implications of that. It's a project that utilizes the dye of pokeweed berries, much like fellow over at Wake Forest, for the production of natural dye-sensitized solar cells. The product of intimately working with pokeweed, nanochemistry research, and material sourcing, these solar cells are part of a broader investigation into endotic materials, which we can define as common, local, overlooked, literally non-exotic, and perhaps also non or minimally extractive and anti-colonial. So that thing that looks kind of like the shape of an old telephone booth is the solar array that I built. Solar salad embodies a mode of production I've been calling ruderal futurism. The term ruderal borrowed from the field of urban ecology, describing plants and other life that thrive in environments distressed by human activity and the invasive and extractive exploits of state and capital. The ruderal is a territory of more than human agency that emerges as a model for futurity, resistance, and otherness. And just kind of looking, I'm going in the wrong direction, apologies. Looking at this sort of strange DIY kind of technological exploit, there are a lot of issues of like contamination in this project, contaminated ideologies, contaminated forms, and basically I become this shopper of strange chemical components that I can procure online, while also having this intimate relationship with the environs here in southwestern Pennsylvania. And so while I see this as working towards anti-colonial modes, in one respect, it is very much entrenched in the material conditions of our reality. So rather than being a total Luddite or anarcho-primitivist, I'm kind of facing these challenges one step at a time. So I'll just kind of walk through some of the exploits here of harvesting pokeweed and processing its dyes, testing their capacities, producing large runs of pokeweed dye solar cells on titanium foil with titanium nanoparticle atop that to enmesh the photosensitizing pokeweed dye. And as this process is rather contaminated, it is still looking beyond, or attempting to look beyond, extractive carbon emitting resources, economies, ecologies, and shipping logistics, not just within fossil fuel, but within green technologies and the reliance upon minerals like platinum or ruthenium, or complex manufacturing for silicon, which is one of the things that is being omitted in this process. So I continue sort of preparing these panels, and we end up with something that looks like this. So solar salad, as well as other projects engaging in forms of rural futurism, are not so much about providing solutions for green survival for the continuation of dominant systems, but rather attempts to work toward opening fields of inquiry beyond historical Western cosmologies towards complex contaminated diversity of life and multi-species commons. Here, this collaboration with Matthew, we are working to grow other sort of ruderal or weedy plant species through different solar forms. And as kind of clumsy and strange as this process becomes, it's out of this sort of bittersweet optimism that we can kind of move past a world of inherited systems of extraction, exploitation, and waste from colonialism, capitalism, and modernity, and perhaps move into this richer future of weeds and these species that will essentially be the species that we cohabitate with in the future. So that's a brief introduction to that project, and I will leave it at that for now.
Thank you. I had to Google what is that plant. I don't think we have it here.
So pokeweed, or Phytolacca americana, is indigenous to North America. However, it is very much seen in the same way that these kind of exotic invasives are seen, as kind of a pest to be exterminated. It has spread throughout the globe, through South America and Asia, but yeah, I don't believe it's very common in Europe.
It reminded me a bit of another project that I've seen made by Bartoku, an artist who's now studying or just graduated from I think Aalto University, and he's using chokeberries or aronia berries. They are also very, very, they're creating a very nice color. So it's very nice to see that this project looks beautiful.
Thank you.
I actually mistook it for the first 5 minutes for that that you were talking about from Aalto University.
I should perhaps check this out.
I will very quickly talk a tiny bit about myself and what I do in my research is I am concerned with food, and I'm trying to come up with different ways how to grow food. And the main idea how I started my research was to kind of go into lazy gardening. So really develop techniques how I can tell people that there is no excuse not to garden. It's so super easy. It's also lying, because it is not super easy. Nothing is easy. And at this moment in my house, I have 2 hydroponics systems and 1 aquaponics system that is not functioning at the moment. We are redesigning it, but we grow herbs and strawberries, mostly basil, sometimes also tomatoes, cucumbers, and random little stuff. And in my years of research, I started calculating how much food I am eating, using in my everyday life. And then I was trying to come up with ways how I can grow that amount of food. And 1 year I actually kind of put my mind to it, and I was trying to actually do this. I got to a bit over half of the amount of food that I needed to survive. I actually gathered. I'm saying gathered because it was mostly foraging and a lot less of the actual growing. So most of the weight came from potatoes, apples, mushrooms, and forest berries. But it became kind of a full-time job over the months of producing food. But so I have experienced the challenges of actually trying to grow this food, and in my normal daily life I am a lot less kind of concerned about the amount of food, that it's at least the idea of growing whatever food that we would be eating. And I can I will share my screen. I am taking photos of my food since 2013-14. This is how it looks like. Every year I am gathering about 1,000, sometimes 2,000 and 3,000 pictures. So you can see the food that I am actually eating. It's like my food diary. I'm making pictures because quickly trying to find some a good picture. Everything seems okay, whatever. So whatever it is that I'm eating that day, whether it's one piece of candy or a salad or a food or a pizza, I will take a picture of it. And so that's taking a picture of it as a replacement for writing down, because I think taking a picture for me is a lot easier than writing down. I'm also trying to keep a food diary with actually writing, but taking a picture has become a constant in my life. Before I eat, I take a picture. If I don't have my phone, or my phone is the battery is low on my phone, I can't eat. It's that serious. And all of my kind of picture data has resulted in this project. That is the tomato-potato plant. In this country, we like our potatoes and tomatoes. And so this calculator allows you to see how much potatoes and tomatoes you could grow in the space available to you. So how many potatoes you could grow on a balcony. So if your balcony would be six square meters, that would mean 6 pieces of growing food. And this calculator at the end, it's again a joke, because if we would grow a balcony full of food, it's still not nearly enough food to actually survive, and you would have a messy balcony. But in this country, we also like to grow food, especially tomatoes, potatoes, and cucumbers. And sometimes you can see people religiously growing food and watering their greenhouses every day, using about 5 to 10 liters of water that comes just from tap. So drinking water to water to a plant of that grows tomatoes or potatoes. So between about May, June until August, every day or every other day, we would spend 5 to 10 liters of fresh water to, at the end, get maybe a kilogram of tomatoes out of each plant. And this is the discussion that I'm trying to have with my exhibition visitors when I show this funny little calculator. There's also a picture of our aquaponics. It's now the older version. We are changing the design so we can have twice as many plants with the same system and the same amount of space. And I can also show you, these are they are shoe boxes that we have made into our hydroponics that are now growing strawberries for us. So those are the projects that I'm working on. So my focus is on food and on teaching people to grow food in this what I call lazy, easy way. That is actually not that lazy and not that easy, but it's the easiest that I've found. Okay, that's that's from my practice. And I don't think the Repair Cafe Riga representative joined us. At least I don't see it in the list. So Anna Katerina, it's
Hi everyone. My name is Ana Souza and I'm a Bachelor Letters degree in Basic Education at Fafs Higher School of Education. I'm gonna start my presentation. Okay, is everyone seeing my PowerPoint? Okay, thank you. Thank you, John. So let's start. I'm gonna talk with you about art as a means of raising awareness for sustainability. The term sustainability linked to the environment is described by the Cambridge Dictionary as the ability to cause little or no damage to the environment in order to preserve it for a long period of time. I think everyone knows the Cambridge Dictionary. So now let's talk about something I think everyone here knows about it. So Earth Overload Day. In 2021, Earth Overload Day was marked on the July 29. This day marks basically the day when mankind consumed the natural resources that our planet Earth can regenerate in a year. In general, we have reached this limit earlier and earlier. Therefore, we can see the urgency of changing our habits and behaviors in order to reverse this process. So now I'm going to show you the scheme you're already seeing. Basically, this shows us when will Earth Overshot Day or Overload Day land in world's population. If world's population lived like, for example, I'm going to talk about Portugal, that it's my country. It will be in May 13, so before July 29. I'm sad with these numbers, unfortunately. I thought we will be like in October, but yeah, we are in May. I can give you the PowerPoint for you to see your day, but you can search online for this scheme. So, all over the world, campaigns and movements have been promoted to protect our planet and its natural resources in order to have a sustainable development. Sorry, I'm nervous. Which means a development that allows us to satisfy our needs without compromising those of our future generations. Here we have two pictures from Portugal that shows us, for example, on the first picture, it's from 2018. It's, if I'm not wrong, in Porto on the north. And basically, we have this movement to clean the beach, and the other one is in Cascais. So as you can see in Portugal, from kids to adults, everyone has contributed to a better future. And the contribution is from everything, from clothes to shoes made of trash found in the oceans to toys, decorative pieces, and other types of works of art that helps us realize that everything in the right hands can have a second life as beautiful or even more beautiful than the first one. So now I want to talk with you about my contribution and my colleagues' contribution to the sustainability of our world, of Earth. Basically, as a student in the degree in basic education, as I told you, I have the possibility of contributing in a special way to the future of our planet, to the teachings and reflections that I will provide to my future students. Education is an essential factor for the choices we make and the way we act. It is extremely important that we work together as teachers, parents, or siblings to transmit the best values to future generations, and together we cover all the good that the planet Earth has to offer. So, about giving a second life to materials. In schools, respect for the environment and the ability to give a second life to materials which, to the naked eye, are considered trash or garbage, and are often discarded after the first use, are installed from an early age. A good example of these materials are, as you can see, plastic corks. We made some posters with them, and coffee capsules. We can make some decorations, rolls of paper, toilet paper. We can do some heroes, for example. In basic education schools, we do this works very often to show kids that everything can be reused and turned into something that they can play, or something, as you can see, very useful and beautiful. So now, at our university, the Five Sires School of Education, we give a great importance to this subject, as our focus is all our graduates are conscious young people or adults who work together to improve the future of our planet. As you can see by the name, it's a school of education. We have my degree, for example, and other degrees that consist in working with kids. And I think it's important for them, as they already do, pass the values of sustainable development and others like those. So together with my colleagues, we had the idea of showing you some of the so-called plastic artists. And we, of course, we are Portuguese, so we are going to show you Portuguese ones. So Portuguese people who make rubbish with discard become real works of art. First of all, of course, the big Arthur Bordalo II. He has a very famous phrase that it's one man's rubbish can be another man's treasure. This is a Portuguese artist born in Lisbon, and he has already held several exhibitions of his work, both in Portugal and around the world, for example, in Germany, United States, French Polynesia, Paris, Las Vegas, as you can see, very different places. So this artist is known, as you can see too, by turning trash or garbage into these giant and colorful animals. For example, the first one you can see in Paris, Faro, Las Vegas, and we have a lot of different works from him. The one from Las Vegas is really, really nice because he basically did living zoo made of trash. You can search online. It's really, really cool. Now I'm going to talk with my friend. So this is the case of, now I'm going to talk with you about Miguel Soares. As you can see and as you know, another form of art quite explored in Portugal is the art of dressing. More and more, with the appearance of new brands of fast fashion, which means buy, wear, and discard, we see the need to invest in sustainable fashion. That's where my good friend Miguel Soares comes in and brings BIMES, or BIMES. Miguel is a 21 years old young Portuguese man who, during COVID-19 pandemic saw the waste of plastic and raw materials that it's basically skyrocketed because of the masks and some of the protection products that we use. When he saw this, he saw the need to offer the market a clothing brand made of organic raw materials, and on his case, made of bottles found in the oceans. And it is basically when BIMES appeared. Let's say that 1 year after his first sale, right now, he already spread his mark around Europe. I think you have already heard about it, maybe. Now, it wouldn't be Portugal, basically, if we didn't take advantage of everything we could to make footwear. And then coming directly from the cradle of the nation, Guimarães, we have Zoe, 100% vegan footwear brand in which all of the pieces are made of rubbish from our beaches. In just 1 year, this brand collected more than a ton of rubbish from Portuguese beaches. Like this 3 that I told you about, we have another or many other examples where Portuguese create initiatives to combat waste or at least transform it into useful and pleasing to the eye. Now let's talk about this time of the year. The Christmas season, as we are now, basically we can contribute to this moment by shopping consciously this time of the year for the Christmas presents. Let's, so as much as possible, try to support brands like the ones that I mentioned before, that produce something with awareness of their future impact on the environment. We also have to make people aware of the plastic and paper waste when wrapping presents, which can easily be reduced by reusing wrapping or using recycled materials. For example, here we have recycled paper to wrap some presents. Regarding the decorations used at this time of the year, tons of Christmas decoration every single year are wasted. It is necessary to promote their reuse, and when it is necessary to exchange them, we can always buy decorations made from recycled materials, which, apart from giving a different glow to your tree, are also unique pieces. For example, you can see here with some CDs and bottles, for example. Together, we can transform the most consumerist time of the year and make it more sustainable and ecological. And at the same time, valuing more important aspects as friendship, love, and companionship. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed my presentation as much as I did. If you have any questions that I can help with, you can say. I'm gonna stop my presentation.
Do we have questions? I have a question, and maybe this question can also kind of start our discussion part. And so imagine that we are now making stuff out of garbage. Does that mean that we need garbage to make new stuff? So what happens when we run out of garbage?
You don't need garbage to make new stuff, of course. You have materials, basically cotton, for example, that are not recycled. But I think we should use garbage because we have tons of garbage, and as you can see, for example, we are throwing garbage to the universe and planting it, stuff like that. And I don't think we are gonna run out of garbage because every single day we do more garbage than we can use. As in, I don't know if you're understanding what I'm telling you. For example, you're cooking, and here in Portugal, you go to shopping and you come home with some meat, with some rice, for example. What do you do? What do you do with the plastic? And you buy bottles of water. What do you do with the bottles and the corks? You're gonna throw them in the plastic, right, on the trash. Why don't you use it? It's like that, because you can do some nice things and different things out of it. And honestly, I don't think we are gonna ever run out of plastic. I don't think that's gonna be possible, because every day we do more garbage.
Well, that's the goal, to not buy bottled water. That's why we have
yeah, but this
like tap water.
We can talk about my reality. And for example, in Portugal, of course, in my house, I have clean water. But I believe, and I have already traveled to another countries that doesn't have. I have a house in Porto, and that house doesn't have clean water, so I have to buy bottled water.
Jan has something to say.
Thank you for your presentation. I have another question, and I hope that I just didn't forget it as we're thinking about that one could always have a filter to clean water, but I think I forgot it. Sorry. Yeah, but why don't you have a filter to clean the water that comes out of the tap? I mean, I use these kind of filters in the laboratory because, you know, it's possible. It's not that expensive.
Yeah. Early, I used it to use one of those, honestly. But now I don't, because if you see the cost and use them, because if you use one, you know that you have to buy filters in some uses. So you can use a filter for example, 5 liters of water, and then you have to buy another one. And then unfortunately here they are very expensive. But if the solution was that, for example, we can go to Africa and give everyone those kind of filters, you know?
Yes, in Kassel, there is a research team that actually builds a backpack that clears water. So that is an option.
You have a little pen too. I don't know if you know, like this little pen, like it's like this, and you can filter water with that.
Yeah, no, I just remembered the question. I grew up in rural Germany, so we have a recycling system, and I'm aware that this system is partially a lie, because a lot of the plastic gets actually burned when the non-recycled waste does not really burn. You put some plastic on it, so it burns better. But taking resources like plastic out of this recycling, I mean, most of the time it's downcycling, but taking it out of the system to make decorative parts that then are agglutinations of several different materials, isn't that making the problem actually bigger? Because if I throw away my water bottle, it can be downcycled or reused to a certain extent, but if I glue some other materials on it, making it actually more problematic as a piece of garbage. Isn't that maybe better not to use garbage, but to use things that will last 5 or 6 lifetimes and just recycle?
Yeah, I'm seeing your point, and I already had the opportunity to be in Germany 3 years ago, and I saw that, for example, when I bought a bottle, normal bottle of water, that I saw, for example, in Germany you don't have trash. That's what I saw. In Berlin, let me finish. I didn't saw trash on the streets because, for example, for the bottles, you have a lot of people there, and everyone that I saw, for example, throwing a bottle to the floor, I saw homeless people or someone catching it because it's money. There it's money. You have, I think it's 20 cents a bottle. When I was there, it was like in Berlin, it was 20 cents, a big one. It was like that. And for example, I go to the supermarket, and if I gave them my bottle, they basically gave me a ticket with 20 cents to spend there. So I think there the problem is you have a big solution, because I didn't saw that kind of pollution because they are giving basically money for the people to give them. I didn't knew that part of them burning plastic. I didn't knew that, but I don't know. We have to see. We are gonna do decorative pieces, because we all, and I'm not gonna say all, because some of us cannot celebrate Christmas, but for example, I celebrate Christmas. And I'm gonna buy some decorations for my house, my tree, and I'm gonna, sorry, with my dog, and I'm gonna buy them. What I'm gonna think, like, I'm gonna spend a lot of money buying new decorations on a normal store, or I can make my own, or I can buy from Little Buzz. Buzzy, I can say. I'm not saying the word. Basically, I can buy from small business the decorations and use them, and they are decoration at the same time. Of course, I know that we need plastic to make more plastic, and that's a good point because we need it, but we don't need it all because, as you said, some of it is burning, and some of it is basically on what's the name in English? I remember in Portuguese is aterros. Let me see online. I don't remember the name in English.
What I was actually getting at is that aren't we not just just turning the problem
Landfills, sorry.
Ah.
We have a lot of landfills here with plastic and paper because we have like, in my house, I have the common trash and I have then plastic, paper, and glass. I spare trash. And sometimes when I go put it on the bigger ones, the containers, I saw basically people putting basically paper in plastic, or for example, bottles of some products to clean bathrooms, for example, on the normal trash. That one can basically contaminate the others, and they are gonna burn because people don't know how to spare trash. Of course, that we can only take the ones the ones that are gonna burn, basically, that can be recycled, that kind of trash. For example, for example, bleach. That's the name. Bleach. You can't recycle bottles of bleach because it's gonna contaminate the other bottles. You can take those, clean them, and make decorations. They are gonna burn, so why can't you?
I have a question to the Americans about recycling.
Americans?
How do you feel about recycling, and what is you work with sustainability ideas, and what is your motivation to do this?
Am I being lumped in with Americans?
Yes, you are.
That's fine. That's a good question. I think, like I said in my presentation, for me, it's more of just like a reality check about just how intensely wasteful we are. Like, recycling is such a small part of the ecological footprint that most North Americans, I think, actually have. And recycling plays relatively well. It's not insignificant, but it just feels like almost futile. Every Wednesday, I pull my recycling bin to the curb outside of my gigantic house, and I'm like, this thing is just leaking constantly out of every window seam and whatever. And if I really wanted to be ecologically savvy, I'd move into a smaller house and I'd get that place actually worked out so that it's somewhat more efficient. I just feel like it feels very futile here to a degree. And also just seeing the reality of so much of the recycling bins on our campus here, the people that are actually collect them and whatever just dump them into the normal garbage. So you think you're recycling, but you're not really. I don't know, it just feels very, I'm not optimistic over here, that's for sure. I think there's just a cultural kind of norm of excess being the kind of standard way of operating for the vast majority of people that feels hopeless to make real change happen. Our campus is one of just a couple in the country that have just achieved carbon neutrality, but the take rate on even trying to pursue that is so infinitesimal because of the cost related. And I think it all relates back here at least to the 4-year election cycle, that everything is such short-term thinking just to get through the next election cycle to get people elected, and then it kind of like falls off. But I don't know, Alex, you probably have a much more nuanced and clever take on it, I would assume, than my kind of like stupid hillbilly like vantage point.
Well, I mean, we're all stupid hillbillies. But I think that one of the problems in thinking through these issues is that we so often like to extricate ourselves from the pollution that is our colonialism, and by, like in Byron's piece, seeing our waste go to Agbogbloshi, or just our like conventional recycling, which I don't even know where the status of that is, but is typically exported to be processed. For the longest time, a huge swath of American recycling was sent to China to be processed there. And so we're looking at like, not just like, can we transmute this material into a new thing, but what are the powers of consumption that happen just in that process? So shipping and transportation, which is fossil fuel, powering the factories that will complete this task, which is also presumably a massive amount of fossil fuel in that undertaking. I can't speak to every recycling facility, but my limited knowledge would say that sometimes it's like, are we even netting like something that is more ecologically sustainable by recycling something than by making it anew, which is like a really dark thing to have to think about. And like, yeah, I think one of the problems is just still this sort of epistemology we have where we don't live in our trash. We want to see it elsewhere downstream. It's contaminating all of our downstreams. So maybe we should be, accepting that and drinking our polluted waters and breathing our polluted air and eating our polluted crops by growing them in our polluted backyards. And like, I think, yeah, if we force ourselves into a situation where we're no longer living in these escape pods into some chaotic future, we may need to confront things a little more urgently and not leave things as a surprise for later when suddenly our escapist mentality no longer has forms of escape. That's just some rambling. So yeah.
I really like this when you do go on to this special day when we will all go now collect garbage on a beach, and then at the end of that day you see that pile of garbage. And I think in this country it's quite normal to not recycle. We have quite many people who just say that they don't believe recycling exists, and it's so I think we do have to have these recycling bins in sight at all times, just to kind of get used to the idea of recycling. However, my belief is that we will get people to recycle with two different approaches. First of all, give them money, or second of all, second option is give them fines if they don't recycle.
That's the thing that actually works in Germany, not giving money to the homeless, but just fining massively if you dump your trash somewhere and you're caught. And we actually have garbage detectives for that. So people loaf through the trash, and if they find a letter with your name on it, you're getting a heavy fine. So basically you have to hear people in capitalism where it hurts the most, on the money, right?
And I do believe that this we can educate young people, and the younger we start, the better. But we can't really like a school or a kind of after school or art project. That's we can educate them, but that's gonna be a kind of 5 minutes out of their week, and the rest of the week they are spending with their families in a huge house where the families are kind of openly saying they don't believe recycling exists. So when we do talk about young people, It's for me hard to imagine how to actually convince the child to oppose their parents, saying that no, mother, we need to recycle. Well, the mother is saying recycling doesn't exist.
And isn't it happening right now with Fridays for Future, for example? It's like openly opposing your parents saying like, no, I'm not flying to the Caribbean with you, or that's in European perspective. I know that, like saying, no, like I want to live in a different world than the one you're creating for me now by your lifestyle. Isn't it already happening?
Well, I think there might be 2 children who will refuse to go on a holiday in the universe, and I think
I met those people. There's a new psychological condition, young people not being able to enjoy the lifestyle that we're leading in the Western countries because they're feeling so much pain because they are aware of what this lifestyle is actually doing. I met people like this who actually had to go in psychological treatment because they couldn't, wear new shoes and things like that. So maybe that's the other extreme, and maybe that's even less than 2 children who refuse that. But yeah, it also happens.
There's oh, sorry, Maija.
No, I was just saying that it's quite beautiful. I would really like to meet a child that thinks that way.
There's a scholar out of Canada. I think she's in California right now. If anybody's interested, I can put you in touch with her. Her name's Britt Ray, and she does really interesting work. And she's got a blog and really a worthwhile follow on all social media. And she writes about this quite extensively. And her recent work is called Gen Dread, and it's all about like the precarity of like raising children in this like moment of like impending climate catastrophe. And she'd be probably, for everybody who's listening here, but especially Maija and Jan, based on what you're talking about, would be like really worth kind of checking out her stuff. I could toss a couple of links in the chat box here.
And how do you look at these the small houses and the minimalistic living that we now have? I think we have 2 Netflix shows talking about small houses and downshifting. But I do enjoy that people that watch Netflix enjoy the small houses project and then do nothing. How do you see these kind of beautiful promotions that are actually not realistic, and people enjoy them as entertainment, but they are not really connecting with this idea that that's actually a way how to live a more sustainable life? Anyone who has an opinion?
I think for me, like living in North America, that's a complex one because like the housing stock will still exist. So if I like move out of my house and build like a tiny house, my house doesn't go anywhere. Like it still exists, and it's like, is it future garbage? Is it abandoned? Is somebody else just going to move into it? So I think it's like, for me personally, from a North American perspective, it's kind of like make the place that you already exist more efficient rather than like using up more like resources and producing like a new place. And I saw a funny commentary in North America also, like this tiny house thing, realistically, I don't know if all the European folks will know like what a trailer park is. It's kind of just like new trailer parks. And this is like a big critique of like the small house movement in North America right now, that it's like a weird gentrification of like a symbol of American impoverishment is like moving into these fancy small houses. And it's this other kind of like weird classism that exists. So from my perspective, I kind of feel like I'm just going to make my house as efficient as I possibly can, rather than try to like move my family who's now accustomed to it into some weirdo little trailer out in the woods. And maybe that's like, I don't know, too narrow of a perspective on it, but it's kind of like make what you've got more efficient. What do you think, Alex? Is that, you know what I'm saying, Alex? I think you kind of got a perspective on this.
Well, I think that when we're talking about small houses and like, what are they actually doing? If you're extracting more resources to build these things, then yeah, you've got that. But also, where are you placing them? How is that connecting to infrastructure of resources? Is it just removing yourself further, and like you're going to be making up for that in other ways through constant consumption of oil, or requiring more like fractured shipping networks, and also just like this idea that it's constantly, again, like removing yourself from a commons, where if we see ourselves as these like disparate individualist entities, we're doing more harm than finding ways to exist together in environs where we can kind of coalesce resources into something that it would be more accessible and more equitable. Of course, that's not how anyone plans living in North America, it would seem. But yeah, it seems to be further entrenching into this like weird American ideology than into something that would be like a traditional or kind of medieval scaled settlement where resource sharing is very efficient.
Yeah, it really feels here like just virtue signaling constantly from the tiny house people. There's like the Venn diagram probably of tiny house people and like rabid consumers is probably almost just a single circle over here. It's like such a lifestyle thing, like in a weird branded way, to me, much more so than an actual like ecological like movement towards any type of sustainability. And I think that like co-opting that happens, that's not just North American specific, but is super ubiquitous here, of like the co-opting of environmentalism as like lifestyle, is really unfortunate. The whole greenwashing thing is just out of control. But yeah, I'll stop rambling.
Oh, it's you mentioned the greenwashing, because that's how I see these Netflix shows of tiny houses. It's promoting design and promoting this idea, but it's not real. It's not something a person would choose. So either you are losing your house, so you don't have a choice, and then you move into a tiny house and you have to give up your old house, and or you're just a mad person who wants to move into a forest. And so I do believe that we can support those mad people who want to live in a forest, because if we get more people to kind of stop using resources and move into forests and kind of remove themselves from the society, and then that's reaching a goal of we need less people on this planet to be more sustainable as a people. But this kind of losing your home and then moving into a tiny house, that's the part that I don't like, because if you are losing your home, you are moving into a trailer, not into a tiny house. So that's kind of my problem with it.
But it's like, just for the sake of discussion, maybe I'm trying to be a little bit more pointed here. I had a car. It was a wonderful General Motors, and it broke down, and I was kind of happy about it because I didn't have the funds to sustain that car anymore. Because as a PhD student, you cannot afford a car, simply. I inherited from my great aunt, who was wealthy, and when she died, I could not keep that car anymore, so I got rid of the car and now have a cargo bike that I share with 5 other people, which is ludicrous because we live on a hill. It's a lot of effort, and now it's even snowing. And the idea of getting a car popped up more than once, but we are simply too poor. So in a way, it's good for the environment, isn't it? I mean, yeah, it's like I'm really over-exaggerating, but wouldn't that be a solution? Just to have people poor.
I was just also about looking about the Earth overshooting, like the thing, and I wasn't aware that Latvia is so high on the overshooting days, and also I saw that the poorest countries are also the ones who are consuming them less products, and so maybe the poorness isn't really a bad thing. Also in Latvia there is this saying that who has the less needs less. Kam ir mazāk, tam vajag mazāk. So maybe this consumerism thinking has gotten us to think that we need more to be successful, but even though we need less, and then we will be better for everyone.
But there's this kind of calculation for if you are too poor, you are unhappy because your life is unstable, and so there's kind of this level of wealth that you need to have to feel normal in your life. But that's the whole idea about downshifting. That's what downshifting is. That people are kind of replacing their insanely huge houses with normal houses, and they are stepping down from their super high paying jobs to average paying jobs, so they could have less, earn less, consume less, but replace that time with spending time with their families and with like spending time in the nature, so to say. But downshifting has never really been kind of popular, because as a human it's very hard to say no to yourself. We are not for some reason able to stop consuming, and that's the weird part of being a human. We know it's bad, but we kind of don't care. It's bad for us to eat fast food or eat chocolate or eat ice creams. In Latvia we eat a lot of ice cream, and however we still do it. It's it's bad, but you kind of don't care because makes your brain happy. Same with alcohol and cars and watching television and scrolling Instagram.
So again, maybe a bold statement, but if you look at the Western culture, we have advanced tremendously in technology, but little in mindset. So you're proposing we change our mindset because fat, sugar, and salt is something that I find rarely when I live as a foraging ape in a prehistoric society. So I'm still getting off on that. But if I use my tremendously brain power to discipline myself and all my other fellow apes, then we have a chance.
Well, that's the challenge. That's my research question, is how to change the habits of people. And I've done quite excessive research into what is my target audience. So what is this person living in Latvia, in Liepaja, or in Europe, that I have to kind of make art pieces that would change their habits. And I am now openly announcing, I've been quite open about this for a year now, I have completely failed. I have no idea how to make long-term changes into habits of people, because people don't seem to care, because it's cheaper to buy food in a supermarket, and the cheaper food will be packed in this vacuum plastic things, and it's more expensive to buy food from a local farmer. So everything just comes down to we want to buy. We are not disciplined enough to say no, and the options that are there are that the cheaper is more poisonous and more accessible.
So the solution is make those kind of things, make them have higher prices. For example, in Portugal, you know the plastic bags of the supermarket. A few years ago, I remember going to the supermarket with my mom, and we had this lady putting our groceries on the bags, and she used like 100 bags, you know, like a lot, really a lot, for a little few things. For example, okay, so this bag I'm only gonna put some bread and everything on a different bag. Suddenly, they said now every bag of those costs have a cost of 10 cents. When that thing happened, I just saw everybody taking their tote bags, you know, the tote bag. Yeah, they took them, and now you go to any supermarket in Portugal, and everybody going with one of those because they don't want to spend money. And the same thing happened this year, if I'm not wrong, here too, because if you go, for example, to Zara or Bershka, any store, literally, whether it be, for example, a jewelry store or clothes, anything, you have to pay for the bag, plastic bag or paper bag, anything, you have to pay. But people don't want to pay, so they prefer, for example, take their clothes on the hand or on other bags, reusable ones, than paying. So make people pay. That's the solution. When they saw they are losing money, of course, if you go to a supermarket, you saw these 2 apples. One of them, you know, that costs, for example, 1.5 per kilogram, and the other 1 euro per kilogram. You're not gonna look at them. You're just gonna like pick the one that costs less, because humans want that. Like humankind wants to pay less so they can spend in other things. So basically, I think that we need to put the things that are bad for the planet with higher prices, so people wouldn't look at them. For example, I'm gonna just give this example. Here we have a supermarket called Convenience, and I think it was in July. I went there with my mom, and we always bought those fruit in those like plastic bags, you know, for fruit. And when we were there, like a girl said, "Oh, why don't you use the other ones? Because they are selling in June reusable bags for fruit and those kind of fresh things. Of course, meat and fish you can basically put on a tote bag because it's not healthy. But fruit you can, because it has like its natural protection." And I saw, like, she said like, "Okay, why don't you use it?" And I was like, "Well, because they are like costs a lot. Like it was like 5 euros per bag." And she said, "No, right now they are offering free." And now I always use them. I take them, I go to the shopping, and I just use them because they were free. Because maybe if she never told me, "Oh, they are free," I wouldn't pay like 15 euros for 3 bags. Like I prefer to use my tote bag, but they said I can't use my tote bag. I have to use or the plastic ones or theirs. So I choose like the option that doesn't cost me money. Now they are offering. Okay, they are offering, I'm gonna use it because it's an offer.
But then, assuming from what you just said, the problem is actually poor people, because rich people, they can afford to buy unpackaged, more expensive things, which I think they're actually doing. So, you know, it's like if you're rich, you can afford ecologically grown food. So while you're having a bigger car and a bigger house and doing bad to the planet at the same time, you're compensating that by buying ecologically grown vegetables. So the poor are the problem, right?
No. Let's see this. Your guys are comparing like having money to having a big house and a good car. That's not linked. You can have money and have a really small house, like with just one bedroom, like really, really small, and doesn't have a car, for example. You can have lots of money, because that's not like linked, having money and having a big house. I know what you're saying. For example, people with a lot of money want big houses, and then are just to show that they have money, but not everyone is like that. There's a lot of people with money that want help, and the difference is that they have the possibility to choose. A person that doesn't have money enough to buy things for the month for their families, they are not going to spend more to help the planet. They want to help their families. But yeah, the problem is the poor people in a certain way, not to rich people.
Yeah, well, I do believe that having more stuff does link to like we are now, but simplifying poor and rich, but let's go with it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I just say one more thing? I'm sorry. I'm remembering, I was looking at John, and John? I was remembering Germany, and I just remember that Portugal did what I saw in Germany, in Berlin. On the beginning of this year, I went to a supermarket close to my house, and I saw this big machine where you put bottles, plastic bottles, and basically, depending on the number of and the size of the bottle, they give you like store money to spend on the store. Yeah, I saw that machine working like that for a month, because after that you couldn't find a bottle of water or plastic bottle in any trash, on the street, because people were going to the trash, picking the bottles just to go to the supermarket and put in there and have extra money. But now they are just like this, they just have the machine, not offering money anymore, and people stop doing that. So money again.
But this is kind of repeating that there are two ways how to get people to recycle, and apparently there's the same two ways how to get people to buy stuff with less packaging. So either return policy or the cost of the product. But can you tell me, are you vegetarians, vegans? What are your how does your food look like? I can tell you that I'm a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian my whole life. I don't know how to cook meat. I've never cooked meat, and it's just meat is not part of my my research. So I always have to have a disclaimer that my research is kind of be more useful for people who are interested in the vegetarian lifestyle. And so can you kind of shortly tell us what are your eating habits?
Me, for example, I eat everything in my house. Everyone eats everything. What we usually do is we have, for example, days in the week where we cook vegetarian food, vegan food. We are always changing, just to reduce our meat consume, just to reduce the amount of meat that we eat. Not because of money, because in Portugal, vegan food is a lot more expensive than normal meat. I don't know how it is in your countries, but here it is. For example, in the supermarket, you have like a special part for vegan food. And for example, seitan, seitan here is like, for example, 1 kilo of seta is basically like 2 or 3 kilos of chicken. So that again, money. More people can be vegetarian or vegan in Portugal, unfortunately. To have a decent, basically, meal, you can't be, you have to have money. And seta and those kind of things bring another problem. I don't know how it is again in your countries, but here, every single vegetarian beef or burger, something like that, comes with a lot of plastic with it, like a lot. It comes in vacuum with like plastic, and more plastic and more plastic. So if you're vegetarian in Portugal, you're not helping the planet too. I mean, you're helping, but at the same time, you're destroying it because of plastic.
I'm not entirely sure of that, but that would get into calculating the usage of water for an animal, etc., etc., etc. But I think the problem is it is processed food simply, because that is heavily packaged. But I got this feeling that actually it's a different problem, because we are only reacting, so we're not having a bigger vision. For example, the water closet. It was a stupid idea to shit in the water that you drink. That's really stupid. I mean, wow, that's stupid. But actually, it comes from a time when London was facing 1700s, 1800s. It was facing a big cholera crisis because people just shat on the street. So people they're having a real epidemic situation. So I thought like, oh God, how do we have to get rid of the shit? Okay, so put it in the River Thames. And then the River Thames was dead. And then it's like, okay, we cannot shit in the River Thames, so let's shit in some canals. It's like, it's just reacting to a problem. So we're just constantly shifting the problem. And maybe we need a bigger idea instead of just reacting and shifting the problem. Yeah, well, that sounds easy. You know, I read a lot of this Soviet science fiction where everything is good and everybody's united under the Soviet scientific world leadership. But maybe, what could that be? How could we stop reacting and come up with a vision that people want to join?
I was on the pizza website recently, and just searching for new things. What's new? What's happening? And I was quite surprised that absolutely nothing has changed. The articles that I was reading as a child, when I was just learning about being a vegetarian and what is this kind of popular culture trying to influence people to be vegetarians and to not buy fur, and absolutely nothing has changed. So if we can come up with a vision how to get people to stop eating meat, that would be as
Damages
basic.
your sex life.
And that's the problem. It's again people just want to have the taste of meat. That's one, and the second one, buying a fast food burger is a lot cheaper than preparing a normal meal. But I really do want to hear, Alex and Byron, what are your eating habits?
Well, I was going to say, I think the issue with being from where I'm from, like in southern Alberta, in Canada, like it's really hard to separate yourself to actually go fully vegan, because it's actually like a real cultural thing, especially in like the rural areas that my family's from, where like ranching and like living off the land and being part of that like culture of raising animals and consuming them is pretty like deeply entrenched. So for myself, I am not a vegan or a vegetarian at all. However, the vast majority of our food is locally sourced, which is good. And in terms of like meat consumption, we purchase and like have animals raised particularly for us and then brought to us. So it's still not great, but it's kind of like trying to get out of that factory farming like system. But I personally would find it very difficult, honestly, to go fully vegan or vegetarian, just because of the place in which I was raised, that being very like rural southern Alberta, where that was like very much a part of the tradition. I also think about like, individuals like the Sami people in Finland, for instance, that live off of like the reindeer that they raise. I don't know. I definitely appreciate the perspective of veganism as being like a massively beneficial thing to our culture and our planet more broadly, but the cultural implications of it would be pretty tough to overcome in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Byron, you bring up an interesting point relating to traditional ways of being, which in our current cosmology, we are so far from that, we can kind of sort of look at the industrial production of meat and be like, okay, yeah, that is not something that we aspire to, presumably, in this small little bubble here. But I think that one of the things that we forget is that we're often leveling massive environments just to create the monocrops that allow for any habitual dietary consumption. And so, in the best of worlds and the best of possibilities, it becomes perhaps about thinking about how do we eat what is at our reach already. So as I walk outside of my house and see nettles or knotweed or the mushrooms that grow in concert with their respective woodland life, can we envision a world where we are living with our food and not, again, kind of partitioning that from what we see and understand, because when we're not kind of like having that relation, we're always complicit in these other ways of devaluing life and devaluing nature. So yeah, and I would actually recommend so many things, but the arts group Spurse has this wonderful Eat Your Sidewalk cookbook, which is both like a guide of foraging, but also like a guide of how we see and understand the world, and kind of trying to, again, decenter our Western ways of understanding the world and try to approach things that are perhaps not as comfortable to us. And yeah, if we were to take on understanding the world around us and seeing that, oh, there are these resources at our feet, they will not produce the same caloric power of, colonial grains and potatoes and the extended granary of industrial agriculture, but we can kind of begin to envision a different way of eating that would reorient how we see ourselves in relation with waste of all forms, like just the amount of waste that it takes to get a organic piece of produce to my doorstep. So yeah, stuff like that. I eat garbage, but I also try to eat what is like directly outside of my house, whether it's conventional produce or not.
I think we keep circling around the like reality when we keep talking about is it poverty, is it whatever that would, like, if everybody was poor, would that help? And I think we keep just circling around the population really being like the foundational issue of all this, because when Alex talks about like caloric intake and decreased caloric intake, if we were all to move towards like a more like an existence based around foraging or eating what's around you, that's pretty hard to sustain like a population. Again, I think back to like growing up in southern Alberta where there is nothing, like literally nothing. It's like a semi-arid high plains like ecosystem bordered on one side by mountains and then literally just grasslands for thousands and thousands of kilometers. And there is nothing there and there is nothing to eat. You could try to eat the grass, I guess. And the reason why like ranching and all these things actually became important to those regions is because that was the only way to actually have food. It's really hard to grow anything out there. It's hard to grow vegetables. The amount of water it takes is totally unsustainable. And I think that's like really interesting to think about those regions. There's reasons why only nomadic civilizations existed within them. And that's because they were following the herds. Places like southern Alberta or similar geographies like Nepal or Tibet have the same thing. There just isn't anything to eat unless you do follow the animals. And I think that's for folks, I know people that I talk to around where I live, where it's incredibly lush and there's tons of food to forage for, and people do that here constantly. It's hard to explain to them what it's like to grow up in a place where you will die if you don't eat, or if you opt out totally of that system. There's no escaping the fact that your demise is imminent, especially when you have 7 months of winter and 16 hours of darkness. Alex is about to experience this on his trips to Saskatchewan in the winter here. So good luck foraging.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's entirely not possible in so many places that we've settled. And there's just this kind of delirium of like, can we make, you know, an Alberta, or can we make a Southern California sustainable? Even though, you know, we all associate California with like crops and plentitude, it's entirely a charade. Like, it's also semi-arid. It's also like, you know, just entire feats of industrial engineering to make it the semblance of what it is. And so, yeah, it does put into light this idea of where do we choose to settle? And there are likely some really, insurmountable challenges in that process.
I'm quite excited that you are here in this discussion because where I live, it's very easy to grow food, kind of not exotic food, but just normal food is very, very easy to grow. Also, we don't have that many people, don't have that much industry going on, therefore quite clean. And we can quite easily grow food in just normal soil in our back gardens, and just everything is very, very normal. And so these are the kind of the areas where isn't it a possibility that people just shouldn't live there?
I've thought that about Alberta the entire time I grew up. And the first time that my wife and I traveled out there, she actually asked, like, how do people live here? When I took her into an area that was half the size of Belgium, that literally only has a couple hundred people in it. It just this massive area. And she was just like blown away that anybody could possibly sustain themselves there. And it's totally artificially supported, as Alex was sort of alluding to. I do think that it's interesting. I used to spend a lot of time in Europe pre-pandemic, and I think that there is a, even when I would be in like the Arctic of Finland or something, the remoteness and emptiness of much of North America is profound and alarming and really quite unsettling to people from from regions where there's just more to eat, more people. Like, I think like of the Great Basin, and Alex was just talking about like Southern California being completely artificially supported. The devastation that it's levied on the Great Basin in the United States, which is an area that kind of stretches from like southern Idaho to the Mexico border or even further, it's becoming even more and more and more arid as more and more water gets pumped into Southern California to raise like almonds or grapes for making wine. And it's just like absolutely terrifying to watch like these regions become like Martian landscapes, even in my lifetime. So if you ever have a chance, come explore this wild west of North America and see how terrifying and hard it would actually be.
Well, you can still have aquaponic systems.
Yes, but you got to get them there, which is another problem, right? Transportation, I think. I always talk to my friends here. It's for me to get home to Alberta, to like the area where my family originally settled, it takes 6 days by car, and that's driving 12 hours a day from Pennsylvania. So like that's to get the hydroponic systems there, to get that stuff there. It's also like, oh my gosh, is that ever energy intensive? So I think you're right. Maybe there just are places where people just shouldn't. Much of the American West is probably one of those places.
It's a strange idea to kind of we all can see these kind of holes in the ways how we live, so we should not live in places where we actually can't grow food. We should stop buying so much food. We should actually calculate how much calories we have to eat per day, because it's a lot less than we think. And eat what is in our reach, as opposed to eat what we want. So isn't that simple?
I wanted to say a lot of things, but the microphone was so far. But anyway, at least in this question, but the problem is that the simplest and the most easiest to reach things for people right now is still the supermarket. So that's still like the most convenient choice, and that's still like there are also like comparisons like why there are people much like healthier in Japan because they have like really simple healthy foods available like in supermarkets instead of like what we have in the West mostly. So and the same problem with like everything. And when I sent you that little video about the Google designing their office for people to eat less, because it just people's brains are actually so simple that we are eating what we're seeing, and our brains are wired in a way that if we see a lot of calories, then it's therefore good. Like our logical brains don't consider it, but our monkey brain considers it as a good thing because it has a lot of calories, and therefore it will give us a lot of energy. And when we were foragers, then those what already Jan before said, that that was really rare to find something like that in nature, like the fatty food and stuff. So therefore our brains are wired to react really positively. And then there are all those big companies using that monkey brain against us. So how to actually fight against the fact that there are the big companies and people who are, it's like, the word in English is the vegan. That's like, they want to make money, they want to make profit of the fact that we are so easy to trick and so lazy actually. They just will not, most of the people will not think 2 steps ahead and will not do those 2 extra steps, even though they want to. It's just they usually just don't do it. They don't. It's just how the brains work for most people. So that's how could we like change the value system in a way that we would actually be against those people who want to make money of our monkey brains? That's like one of the questions I want to, big questions that would be like a big cultural shift in the way. But I don't see it happening in the near future. Yeah.
And that's why we have to study those children that don't want to go on holidays. That's because that's if we can get more people to say no to their monkey brain, that's then we're fine.
I think it is their monkey brain reacting to it. I mean, if you look at humans, just because we are apes, We are a population that is under threat in a given habitat. So, of course, the new generation is kind of changing how it lives. This question is, do they live to get old enough to change enough, or do we include them in our comfortable system? So at some point, you know, young people are very idealistic, and the older you get, the less you care about the more you settle in, or the more you take in that we're ambivalent animals, monkeys and humans. So are we going to get there without losing tremendously amounts of land and humans and other than humans? I mean, I don't think humans gonna die and the planet is not going to end. It's just a question, what's the price? And who has to pay it? Sorry for being a downer.
No, I do believe that humans will die. I do believe that at
We're
some
vermin,
point,
we're parasites. We're
at
not going
some
to die.
point, we will reach the point when we can't survive anymore, and I do believe that that point is not going to be in our lifetime. Therefore, we don't really see that point.
And that's the problem. The problem is that we are not going to see it. People are selfish. We look at ourselves and we think, we have what? 190 years to live? That's not going to happen in my lifetime. I don't see no one, like no elder people saying, oh, I'm going to think about my grandchild. They're not thinking. They think like, I did my part on my time, so they have to do their times. And I think schools, as I told you on my presentation, have one of the biggest parts here, because of course parents and the way you are teaching homes, it's important, but schools do a bigger work, because you spend like about 10 hours more in school per day, and you spend like 8 hours sleeping. The other 6 hours, sometimes parents are too busy working or shopping or something. On normal school days, parents doesn't spend that much time with kids. So the biggest thing here is that our teachers, my teachers, I'm gonna be a teacher, and the future teachers have to teach this, have to not brainwash them and not make them not think like a monkey, but try to guide them on the right way. I mean, it's what we want. That's why we want to work with children. And as I told you, if we can like guide them to what we think is a better place, and what we can prove right now, that's what we're doing, that it's a better place, we are going to do it. But it's always difficult to go against father and mother and parents' advices and things, because parents doesn't like that. Parents don't like that, and parents can easily go to school and say, okay, that's the way you think. That's what you're trying to teach my children. Okay, I'm going to take them and put it on other school. But let's think a little bit. Who's the teacher that told the kid, or who's the parent that told the first kid, like 100 years ago, don't eat meat? I can answer you a bit of this. I was having a class today. We were talking about Pythagoras, you know, the theorem of Pythagoras. You know, that, yeah. Basically, this the scientist he was a vegetarian. Not because his parents told him be a vegetarian, not because, yeah, that's what I took in class. Not because someone was telling him it's better, because on his mind it was what was better, because we have somewhere to start. The first person to don't eat meat, to be a vegetarian or a vegan or something, wasn't told to be like that. We have that idea, so we have to believe that kids are gonna build their personalities and build their ideas. And we have a lot of examples of kids that think for themselves and go against their parents and don't go on trips and do different. And we have a lot of those kids because of the change we are making in the world. Because for example, on the news, you just have to watch the news, and on the news you can watch like the way the world is basically, the mankind are destroying the world. And kids saw that, and kids start thinking, kids like 10 years old, 13 years old, start think like, okay, what about me? I'm not gonna have plastic, I'm not gonna have nothing. I need to survive. So they are start basically changing. I think right now people and young people are being less selfish than elder people. That's what I think. I don't think the problem is in the rich and the poor. I don't think the problem is on the family trips or something like that. I think the problem were the box, because people were raised on a box. You have to think like that. You have to be like that. Now people are free. People are free to think, free to speak, and have their own ideas.
But it's very hard to go against your parents, because I became a vegetarian when I was 6-7 years old, and it did not happen in a one day. It was a lot of 5 years of yelling and force feeding, and I have no idea how did I, like, what happened with me as a child that I wanted to do this, that I was refusing to eat meat.
I understand your point of view, because you passed through that. You saw yourself trying to show someone that that's the better path. And like you, there's a lot of people trying to show their parents their choices are real choices. And I'm not just talking about what they wanted to eat, you know? I'm not just talking about that. Young kids are always trying to show their parents that they have a voice, basically. They have the right to choose what's better for them. The problem is we can't always change our parents. We don't have to change them. We have to show them that's the best, without yelling, without discussions. We can always, I think people can always negotiate, you know? I say this because when I tried to be a vegetarian when I was 16. And I just told my parents I want to be a vegetarian. Of course, they didn't like the idea, because they thought like, okay, not gonna eat healthy, she's gonna be too thin or sick. Parents don't say like, you can't be vegetarian because they don't like it. They say because they are worried. So we have to show them that there's another way, there's another part of the world that vegetarians can be healthy and it's okay. I think like in 2021, if I tell my mom, like, Mom, I want to be a vegetarian, she will be like, okay, you can, because she already saw on the news that it's something healthy. She already talked with doctors. And I think that's a problem. I think that's not enough information. Like on TV, on news and stuff, you see a lot of like news that could, like pink news, you know, like could be like not there. And I think we need more news about real things, about changing. Because maybe when you were 16, if your parents saw on TV a doctor explaining that being a vegetarian with a good like diet and stuff, it's okay and it's healthy, they will agree. I don't know if they agree with you now, but I hope so.
Well, I buy and make my own food, so they don't care. But when I was becoming a vegetarian, that was early 90s, and at this moment it's kind of a lot nicer. The discussion at least is there about different choices.
Isn't that all just very Western and Europe centered? Because they are, I mean, India, they are alive for thousands of years without eating meat. Isn't this just an example of how much we're focused on what's going on in our countries? Shouldn't we maybe ask other people who have other cultural techniques from repositories dating inhuman deep time back to help us. I mean, maybe we cannot solve this Western European problem ourselves. Maybe, let's face it, we ran ourselves in a problem and we cannot get out of it because we're stupid. So let's ask for help.
But
Sometimes
think
the problem can be religion too.
but paleo diet is quite popular.
Doesn't that mean eating more meat and not eating vegetables?
Yes, it's the original human diet.
That's original bullshit.
Well, it's I like being a vegetarian, and I kind of might see the reasoning behind eating locally sourced happy cows. But then again, I have 2 cats. I feed them food, so I also have a dog, and so they probably are eating my share of meat. So kill all house pets. That's another step towards more sustainable planet.
You could feed the dog to the cats, and when the dog is gone, you could catch other animals roaming the streets, feed them to your cat.
Yes.
Said that.
You could
but
catch the neighbor's children and feed them to the cat, because this is the biggest problem. Humans are the biggest problem. Like it came up in the discussion, population.
Yes, old people.
You can also like
Young people, children.
start hunting like Liepaja's cats, and there are so many of them, and feed them to your cat.
We do have a problem with street cats. There are way too many street cats.
I think that's a general problem. Here we have the same. But here we are trying to take care of it, not killing them, but with other ways. I was thinking about what you were saying about your cats and your dog. That they are hitting your amount of meat. That's a thing part to think about too, because I saw a new during COVID, basically ASTE, that his owner was vegetarian. He's a vegetarian, I think. And she was feeding him only with her diet. So he started getting sick, and we have to take care of them. And if there's like a diet, or like you go to the vet and he gives you like I don't know if you do that here, but basically we go to the vet and he tells us, for example, this is the better food for him to eat, like this brand, and because of the parts of potatoes and meat and fish, for example. And we have to take care, because some vegetarians, I see this news quite often, are like trying to make their animals be vegetarian without they want to be, you know? Like she was trying to defend herself in court because it was like basically she was on jail because of animal mistreatment, and she was trying to defend herself, saying her husky didn't want to eat meat. They just put like a beef in front of him. The dog was starving. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be a vegetarian. I'm saying that what you're doing is right. Like, don't obligate the others, especially the ones that can't talk, to follow what you think that's best.
No, that's pets in general. It's just if you have a pet, that pet needs to have a normal diet. This is not even it's not a thing. But we are over our time, and we should stop this, and maybe we have
stop what?
Stop all of this. And so maybe you have some comments or last words of encouragement. If not, then
Kill yourself to save the planet. Wasn't that a song by Black Sabbath in the 80s?
Well, we are talking about this since like since I think 50s, and like these topics about being vegetarian, wasting just less resources, living in a more sustainable way, and that the population is also a part of the problem. This topic has been around forever, and it has not changed. And I mentioned the PETA website that looks exactly the same how it looked 15 years ago, and it's alarming that nothing has changed. And today we have discussed that the only way how to get people to change is give them fines or give them money. And it's,
again, the problem is money.
We live in capitalism after all. I mean, we govern with money. I think it's intrinsic to the system, maybe. I mean, it's a feudal system. Just we call it capitalism, it's feudalism. Yeah.
But for it to really happen, then if we are using capitalism, then how can we actually, because it's kind of fight against still capitalism, because biggest capitalists are not really interested in this sustainable future, at least for now, while it's not making them capital.
Maybe capitalism will save us because it is non-capitalistic to waste resources. You know, maybe we have to look at it from a capitalistic point of view. Being unsustainable is a waste of money. It's not giving you profit on the long run.
I think they're pretty much fine with wasting some resources, at least what I have noticed. Like at least for the amount of packaging and stuff, it's a waste of resource.
But then capitalism will end when all resources are gone.
That means when the planet is dead, then the capitalism will end, yeah.
We just have to sit it out. Yeah. It will go away on its own. It's over, everybody. We have solved it.
Yeah, so maybe it's good if humans die. Maybe, you know.
I think that's the solution. Let's kill all the humans in the earth, and that's fun.
There's something going on. I don't know if you have noticed already the pandemic. Maybe it takes care of it.
Maybe.
But that's the idea, that all the people who are dying now, we have to allow them to die, and then we are fine. Like we have to stop saving people. And this is the idea from the 70s. So this is how long it has been around, that overpopulation could be solved by if we could stop saving people who can't survive in the environments that they are in.
That's not really...
As a paramedic, I was saying this is inhumane. As a German, I say it's very inhumane. I think it would be better not to make so many children.
That's a good point of view.
That's the thing, still the poorest countries are the ones that make the most of the population growth and stuff. It's like still like all the economics connected to the social sciences, like a big well-connected world, like how there are reasons behind them why the poor people are producing more and more children, while the Westerners, who are the biggest polluters, are producing less. So I don't think those people who are making the most children are the ones really to blame, though.
Thanks for pointing out the complication, Paula.
I know, maybe it was a joke. I didn't.
I don't think
No, you're right.
Is kill people or let people die with diseases and stuff like that. Of course, it's easy to talk like, oh, let's let people die, but when we are talking about your mother, your son, the conversation is different. Of course, we are always trying to save our beloved ones, as it's normal. I think the solution is, as John, I think he's John the name, said, let's like make a control on how many kids you can have. For example, my grandma has 10 kids. 10. The other one is 9. Of course, my mother only has 2. But okay, I think that on my grandmother's time, it was a normal thing, like I have 10 kids. 15. Why not? Why? Because kids were similar to work, to money. And again, money. Nowadays, kids, like, they are not allowed to work, so they are not making money. They are just spending your money, so you have to have less kids. Then again, money.
But we have to stop our discussion. We are way over time. I apologize. And let's meet again in a couple of months, and we can continue our discussion with maybe fresh ideas, hopefully with a degree in at least my pocket already. Jan, when is your due date?
3 to 4 years. But when is your defense?
Well, if I sign it in January, then sometime in May. So, yes.
Just tell us when, so I might be around.
I will invite you.
Woo!
I feel like a kid. I'm only on my bachelor's degree. So
Okay.
on the second.
Thank you. Thank you all for
I'll see y'all later.
participating. And really, it was a lot of fun. Absolutely no result. And but that's sometimes also the fun part. And really, thank you for joining us, and see you again in emails.
Bye.
Thanks for having me. Have a good day.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
This discussion